Hey there everybody, this is Killin' Cat, but you can call me Patrick. Trust me, it's okay, everyone does. Most titles I try and cover are obfuscated by other things these days, or just lost to time, so sometimes I try and treat myself with something more common that I also like, to keep me somewhat sane. And in this case, to live up to a promise that I made when I played through Dynasty Warriors on PSP back in the day, so I started Warriors Orochi for PSP. And then I was gonna start the Xbox 360 or PS2 version, but I found the PC version. It goes without saying that the PC version is the definitive way to play this game if you can get it running. If not, the Xbox 360 version is the definitive version. So I set out to make this work, and after some work, I actually got it up and running, and you can find my fix on the discussions tab for this game on PC Gaming Wiki. I didn't edit it because I don't trust my ability to edit this. This took a surprising amount of troubleshooting to figure out, mostly because I didn't think of the simple solution. It's refreshing to have this game run natively with no issues on PC since I've been playing the PlayStation 2 version forever. Sure, Warriors Orochi Z did that, but it's stuck in Japanese only with a 15% completed English fan translation, and viewers being able to read my content matters to me. Okay, let me get my checklist out here. This game came out 17 years ago. Alright, falls right into that aged category I like. It's an obscure title by modern standards and is becoming harder and harder to play. Yep, that's good. No one has went fully in depth with this title yet. Some information might not be fully accurate or fleshed out. Yeah, this is Let's Play worthy. There's no way to make a spoiler-free review of this game, and I don't think it matters a lot. The intro tells you all the major things you need to know to start playing and understand what's going on. Not the intro upon starting up the game, the other one that starts when you select your first mission of the Shu, Wei, Wu, or Samurai campaigns. Sure, the intro at the startup is cool, and it does display the reality bent world, but it gives no reason for it, it just looks awesome. To properly understand the first thing you see in the game, which is that intro trailer, you need to start playing the game itself, which I assume makes sense to people, but just in case. Also, the same intro movie plays for every single story mode and campaign. I'm glad this changed later on in the series, that is really disappointing. Hey there, me and Post here. Before I get further into this, I realized that I didn't talk about the controls anywhere in my script or recording. It's pretty rare for me to do that, but it was because these controls are second nature to me. If you've played any Musou game, you won't have an issue playing this title, except maybe the PSP version due to it having less buttons and needing a little bit more effort to get used to. As a summary, on screen now is every regular button input. They work extremely well in this title, including the PC version. The PC version does require a bit of button remapping to get fully functional, and for the love of all that is good, don't do what I did. Remember to save your changes in this menu. But no matter what you do, keyboard or gamepad, those work just as well as each other. There's a slight problem with more modern controllers and mapping directional camera inputs, but give this game credit since it came out in 2008 and they didn't expect remotes to have the versatility that they do now. Playing this thing on keyboard actually hurts my fully grown adult hands, so the gamepad is needed for me. And if you're like me and you have an old Xbox 360 remote laying around, you can plug that thing in. I cannot guarantee success in its functionality, but I can at least tell you it might work. Maybe. Now I'm going to get back to the rest of my review. The first time you play, you might be compelled to play the Shu storyline since the game's select screen starts on it, but I actually recommend against that. Instead, you should play the Wu campaign. It's by far the most approachable one for new players, and you don't have to complete any campaign to play another one. So you can just drop this one and pick up another campaign if that one tickles your fancy more. However, you do have to complete a campaign in order to play as the characters you unlocked in that campaign in another completed campaign. I think that's a fantastic reward to work for 100%ing this game, and I honestly consider it a requirement. It makes everything so much easier if you unlock all the maps and all the characters and find the right maps that you can use for grinding things out, which is also very necessary. Grinding is a requirement for pretty much any Musou game past Dynasty Warriors 5 or 6 and maybe some from before that, but thankfully it's rather light here. Compared to some titles years later that take literally thousands of hours to complete, this one's a measly 80-ish hours, and that is a relief. Grinding is mostly for unlocking character weapons, of which you need all 4 weapon levels plus a secret requirement to complete that character's catalog and get some cool art assets, and then plus some. Also worthy of note, after playing this game for years and years and years and years, I don't think I've found all possible character dialogue outcomes. When you fight a named and uniquely modeled officer with a potential counterpart to them, sometimes you'll get a special dialogue. I have absolutely no idea how to trigger all possible interactions. There are too many combinations, and I guarantee you that the people making this at Koei Tecmo were smoking something special for them. There are some interactions in this game that you can only get by bringing in characters from other campaigns, or bringing characters you unlock in later stages of the same campaign back to an earlier stage. Why would I ever think to do that? That only matters so much to me because I want to be able to show all of that extra dialogue off, but without a streamlined approach, it's really hard to do, especially when dialogues are all over the board and some spots are way better to return to for grinding than others, so you might just miss them. I only found about these other prerequisites because I was going back to an earlier stage to grind, and it was with a character you get later on in the same campaign, and then another character that you get in a different campaign, and they both had unique dialogues at the ending of that level. In order to test for each possible outcome, you'd need to play each map a total of 77 times, which adds up to 1,540 map runs, or level replays. Missions? Whatever you guys want to call them. Normally, I'd say if you're familiar with the characters, you could predict these interactions, but that's not on the table here. You have expected ones that you'll know like the back of your hand they'll happen. And then there's so many you'd never expect and so many characters you'd never think would interact, but they do. This gets worse in Warriors Orochi too, but honestly, this is a really good quality of life aspect for the game. It rewards your experimentation, and I think that's beautiful. So me complaining about this isn't really a real complaint, it's just because I want to be able to collect everything and show you guys it, but I honestly might not be able to do it. I'm pretty sure there exists no catalog of all these dialogues on the entirety of the internet. There are simply too many, and sometimes they don't even trigger. I guarantee you that if you want these dialogues, you're gonna have to play maybe up to 7 times or more with a specific character on certain maps. Thankfully, these aren't required for your completion, because if they were, in simply one version of the game, you would be spending a minimum of 102 hours to get these, and a maximum of 750 hours. I did the math for that myself. It's really simple grade school math, it's just big numbers. And if you want to get every dialogue in every version and see every edit, you're going to be spending over 2,000 hours. I want to make an addendum because I went back in post to check. It's actually over 4,000 hours. It's closer to 4,700 hours. I'm sorry guys, but I'm not going to be able to cover every dialogue option for this game because that is just truly ridiculous. However, it's also insanely impressive, and I appreciate every single line because almost every single one of them makes sense. These characters would reasonably act this way, and that's kind of awesome. Also, I know to many gamers, this is a dirty word, but this game is an asset flip. No, I don't think that should be a dirty word. Everyone thinks it is, but pretty much every big name and every big game and every well-known title these days is an asset flip of some kind. No, not Breath of the Wild, but Tears of the Kingdom, which far exceeded the sales of Breath of the Wild and did so much better than it. Pretty much every single Pokemon game has been an asset flip of the previous one, except for the first title. We shouldn't admonish asset flips. We should admonish a lack of ingenuity and creativity. Thankfully, this game has a lot of that, and even if you don't inherently like the new stuff the game brings, it has one-to-one conversions of pretty much every map that's really important for the Dynasty Warriors and Samurai Warriors series. And up until this point in the series, it includes pretty much every single Dynasty Warriors and Samurai Warriors characters that was playable to the point of 2007. And then it has its own unique characters piled on top of that. And this isn't a simple asset flip of putting these characters into this game. They all have their own unique moves and specials and sometimes different combos and weapons, and that's kind of insanely awesome. It also takes inspiration and brings in every single best move pool that these characters have as well. That might not seem like a big thing to you guys, but I want to point out Samurai Warriors doesn't bring back characters for every game. Samurai Warriors 2 cut characters that were in Samurai Warriors 1, and Samurai Warriors 3 cut characters from Samurai Warriors 1 and 2. Samurai Warriors 4 is the only game in the series that has actually had every single playable character available, meaning that Warriors Orochi is the only way to consistently play every single Samurai Warriors character. Now, don't quote me on that exactly because I don't remember every single character in all of these games, but pretty much everyone is here. One or two people missing isn't as big a deal as it is if they're cut from their main game, which Dynasty Warriors doesn't do. I know I can be a bit daft, so forgive me if I got that wrong. However, there's so many characters in these games, I always forget at least a few, and I know that's my problem. As example, I never remember Ling Tong as a playable character until he unlocks. And then I forget him sometimes then too. Now moving on to lighter and brighter subjects that people probably won't be mad at me in the comments for. Abilities are a thing in this game. Play a character for long enough to increase your proficiency as them and unlock more attacks, combos, moves, higher stats, the works. You get to level up as well. Abilities are a special unlock case, where you have to meet specific requirements in battles. And you can check those at any time in the intermission between levels, and you can also check them in the middle of battle through the team info screen. Each character has a few levels of abilities to unlock, where some have more and some have less, and some unlock more ability unlocks as you level them up or increase their proficiencies, but the latter is so rare you'll probably never notice that until you need it for 100%. Abilities are assigned from a pool, where you can bring a bunch into a battle and enhance specific stats. You can have increased attack for a specific class, increased defense, increased experience gain, higher luck. There's a lot, alright? There's 18 different abilities, with most of them maxing out at level 20, and the rest maxing out around level 10. You can only bring 7 of those abilities into battle at any time, but the choices are pretty clear if you want to have a fun time. Maybe you want a challenge though, and you want to experiment and try something different, and that's cool. Not everyone's been playing this game as long as me, guys. I understand that. Let's move on to some story talks. Each campaign starts at a different point for all characters. I honestly haven't been able to piece together where everything goes in exactly what order, but there is a clear ending by the start of the next game, and I'll let you guys find out that when I cover that one too. It is weird, but there is a distinct timeline as well, and I can say that without doubt. The way every campaign starts and shows and puts all the pieces together in specific orders for specific events is really very telling of the amount of care that went into this to make sure you have most of your answers if you complete all 4 campaigns. The biggest question you're left with is, why would Orochi do this if it was clearly going to fail, or why does Masamune Date serve Orochi so willingly? And for that, you just gotta keep playing the series. Go Tecmo put more and more care into the writing as the series went on until the 4th one, but we're not gonna talk about that one yet. Just know that even up until the 3rd one and Warriors Orochi 3 Ultimate Definitive Edition, which recently released on Steam and is a mouthful to say, and I need to gasp for air. They seem to care so much until the end of the 3rd game, and I'm not just talking about the end of the 3rd game when it launched, the end of the 3rd game most recently, at the most recent launch this year, or late last year, somewhere in there. I don't know why they did that to Warriors Orochi 4 is all I'm gonna say, guys. Since so much effort is put into making sure the story follows a specific chronology, it always struck me as odd that more effort isn't put into the writing itself. I guarantee you the reason that this game rests between the 50% and the 70% is because people played the Shu storyline first, the worst written one, and the worst voice acted one too. And it's displayed as your introduction to this game when it doesn't have to be. You can tackle it in any order. Quite frankly, I know I said that Wu is the best introduction story, but the Samurai storyline is the most driven of any of the existing stories and bridges many arcs between the other campaign storylines. I cannot understate just how well this is handled, since every campaign up until the Samurai one feels like it falls in a specific and predictable line. But then the samurai campaign comes along and it turns out Nobunaga has set up everything that would happen leading up to the end of the game. I feel like it's this way because they stick too close to how the actual stories for these characters go in history and in Koei Tecmo games. But maybe it's also because every other campaign either feels so directionless that you feel more like a wanderer or so guided that you might as well be on rails. It really highlights that Nobunaga's ambitions are so much stronger and they hit so much harder because of that. There's a distinct plan and goal, and everything you do is making sure that happens. In the Shu story mode, you eventually happenstance upon the final boss. In the Wei story mode, you do plan it out on the rails, and sometimes it just doesn't make sense because it's trying to connect one thread to another. And in the Wu story mode, you go on to save the Sun family after they almost sacrifice themselves for no actual reason, after you spend a substantial amount of time bouncing around the world. After playing the Samurai story mode, analyzing the structure of every other one is worse. It doesn't make them bad, it doesn't make them poorly written, and it doesn't make them not in character though. Trust me, they accurately represent every single person. And every single story mode is represented with extreme distinction between them. This game was written with an absolute understanding of the history of these characters, and it's mixed in with their actual history in real life. I suppose this comes down to preference at the end of the day of which story mode you do prefer, because none of them are bad and they're all crafted with care. Though I swear to you, someone told the Shu storyline actors to act like they all knew a secret that no one else knew. Everything in this game, though, is done exactly as the characters themselves would do, sometimes a little bit flanderized. There's no moment in any campaign that is truly nonsensical. It might just be unreasonable. Some of the bonus dialogue, I guess, but that's bonus dialogue. You don't guaranteedly get that. It's a reward for experimentation that's optional rather than something that's canon. But that push for experimentation is something this game excels at. There's a point in every Warriors game where you're just going to slot in on a character that is your favorite, and you're probably going to be playing them through the rest of that campaign if you can. It's simply a comfy way to play, and I won't knock it. But the game itself borderline begs you to experiment. There's so much reward for doing so and for getting good at every character. You get what feels like exponentially more rewards until you reach a peak for them, but that's not their true peak. There's more hidden behind beating levels on higher difficulties or playing certain levels in certain ways to unlock special hidden aspects of each character. It feels like this game goes on forever, but the game is a measly 80 hours without going for every single dialogue. But then I reach that peak where there's nothing left and I want more. And that's exactly why this game was so successful. It was a celebration of this gameplay style, and it took it to the limits of what it could really do for the 6th generation of consoles. At least I want to say that, but Warriors Orochi 2 did come out about a year later, just over a year. But this game itself did so well on the PlayStation 2 that it eventually came out on pretty much every 7th generation console as well, and then it got this PC port in 2008. I will note it didn't come out on the Wii and DS, but it did get the sequel that I've been talking about here and there the following year in 2009. Well, this game came out in 2007, but the PC port I'm playing came out in 2008. If you stick it out with this title and come in with the expectations of the era it's from, you're gonna have a good time. This is from that time where Warriors games weren't so easy to break, taking more time and effort to do so, and even at your peak, you can still get clobbered by something stronger. That can happen in the modern games now too, but it's not near as common to happen. It's also not as overwhelming in the amount of content as, say, Hyrule Warriors or Warriors Orochi 3 Ultimate Definitive Edition. Still a mouthful. However, it's also not as good as Warriors Orochi 2, which puts everything in this game and just makes it better. And it's exceptionally worse than Warriors Orochi 3, which made everything better without skipping a beat. I dare say even Warriors Orochi 4 is better than Warriors Orochi 1 now, and I think that's kind of a shame because, well, this game has so much promise. It's just the first entry in a series. It's the framework. It's the foundation. It's nothing as special as what came after. Also, just for reference, because I have to talk about the music at some point, and we're getting close to the end, you're gonna hear a lot of insanely good songs in this game, but that is a given with this franchise. Even the worst games in this genre typically have really good music. I say personally, if you look at this game for what it was at the time, this is a lot of fun. And it set forth the very concept of what modern Warriors games became and what they're best remembered for. It feels like the amount of content here is bottomless, but you can always get better. And for later games, it is pretty much bottomless. Just more and more and more and more and more and more content is added. Sure, you had some pseudo-bottomless amounts of content in older titles, but this game is notably a turning point that laid a foundation this genre built upon less than a few years later, and that's kind of amazing. I don't think Koei Tecmo thought this was going to be a success like it was, but it blew those expectations out of the water, and it shows. If you want to play this game just for the story, that's also doable, and I recommend it before going into Warriors Orochi 3 because story and writing are way more important by the time that game came around half a decade later. There were even seeds put in place for all the stories of later games in this very first entry, and I think that's amazing. There are a few oddities though here and there that I will discuss, such as some maps that are hardest on the easiest mode, not because they're actually hitting harder for you, but because the person leading the battle could actually die halfway into the map because they're also significantly weaker to an extent that even regular soldiers can take them out when you're halfway through. Sometimes even less than halfway through. Look, I'm just saying this game is not balanced perfectly by any means, and you're probably going to experience that firsthand if you try the Shoes story mode first. Some of the requirements for unlocking characters and stages are so specifically obtuse, and you'd never be able to know how to do so without looking them up. I wish that was a joke, but it's really just sadly not. In Way Chapter 6X, or 6 Gaiden, some people say it's 6 Gaiden, in order to unlock Jinji, you have to beat enemy sorcerers in a very specific pattern, and every time I go through this stage, I have to relearn that because it's not something that's clear. And I've played this game a lot. I think I've said I've played this game a lot, but that's still a problem for me, and I've done it so many times. Beating a stage on hard mode is actually so ridiculously difficult your first time through, but it's the only way to get the 4th level weapons, and you can only unlock those in stages that are 3 stars in difficulty or above, so a medium to hard difficulty. Even after you get these weapons, it's so easy to get juggled to death by random enemies, and it's infuriating. You need to do this for all 77 characters for 100% as well. I know I said it in the sentence before last, but it's just beyond infuriating. I'll seriously start a stage and in less than 2 minutes sometimes just be dead, because that's how this game works on the hardest difficulty. Oh no, I'm sorry, just hard mode. I can't imagine what playing on chaos mode is like. It sounds terrible. But in later Warriors games, I'm actually able to play chaos mode. It's just not balanced in this one. Seeing all the officers that later got implemented into both series, but aren't in this one and are thus generic modeled officers, gives a very weird feeling, especially since they name drop Cheng Pu in the Wei storyline. And Cheng Pu wasn't implemented until Dynasty Warriors 8 Extreme Legends more than half a decade later, I believe. There were very clear plans to implement these characters, and it took way too long to do so it feels a little bit empty here. There are 3 character types: power, technique, and speed. Power class characters use their Musou gauge and attacks to max out the damage they deal. Technique characters specialize in buffing themselves or the rest of your party and escaping from tough combat situations with some of their Musou gauge. And speed characters don't use any of their Musou gauge for special attacks, only their Musou attack, but their special attack is much weaker than every other character's special attack with a few exceptions. Since you only use a portion of your Musou gauge whenever you use a special attack in this game, it's split into multiple pieces. Well, that's true for every character that isn't a speed type. Honestly, this system is flawed, but I love it, and I wish more Musou games used it. Having multiple classes and special attacks is a beautiful concept, and it's handled so well in the first 2 Warriors Orochi games. This is made even better by the fact every character is also unique, adding on to their existing moveset. However, some characters clearly got the shaft. Dian Wei has never been more useless than he is in this game. There's no repetition between characters even if some of them share similar animations. Take note, Dynasty Warriors 9. And finally, defeating 1,000 enemies in Samurai Chapter 7 to unlock Samurai Chapter 8X and/or Gaiden is really hard to do, especially on the PC version where there's so much more happening at any time. The easiest way to unlock that stage is through the PSP version, sadly. Thankfully, however, the PSP version is the definitive edition of Warriors Orochi 2. Unless Koei Tecmo finally decides to bring over Warriors Orochi Z fully translated. I'm not going to be playing that game for this channel otherwise, especially not with a fan translation from 2010 that's 1/6 of the way done. It's just not worth it. However, if they slap this on Steam or GOG with the already complete translations for $30, then it is very worth it and I will spend that money on it. It's fun to mention that the first 2 Warriors Orochi games also technically qualify as abandonware now. It feels like Koei Tecmo forgot the first 2 games existed at all, which is even worse because finding these titles is becoming a chore and they're not really available anywhere. Play this one in any way you can, it's a lot of fun, but do keep in mind every game after this one is better than this one noticeably. If you're gonna get introduced to the series, you might want to start here because it's otherwise gonna be hard for you to get into this one. But if you don't care about that story, jump ahead to Warriors Orochi 3 and experience the true bliss of Musou. Personally, for me, it was nice to have this game while I had it, especially for so long. It's nowhere near as bad as people say it is, it's also nowhere near as good as people say it is. I really wanted to talk about it and say that the rosy retrospection isn't as good, or that the game is better than people expected, but it's gonna probably just rest at a 7. Maybe a play it. However, for all its flaws and for all the introductory to the series-ness it is, it's weirdly comforting in its own way. Especially so for me, as the early part of 2024 has felt so bleak. I mean, look at all those controversies and retirements that are going on. It's a frightening one. This little game that's probably around 2 gigabytes has helped me keep sight of a little bit more hope. Maybe that's because I don't really end the game. When I end the game, I have an attachment to it, and therefore it stays with me. I digress. We're at the ending now. Thanks for watching, everyone. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you like my stuff and want to see me succeed, and you can support my channel for less than $1 a month to get early access to all my content here on YouTube. Or you guys can donate to me via Ko-fi in the description below. All my social stuffs are in the description too, and that means you should join my Discord. That's about it, and I'll see you guys next time. Get some sleep, friends, and think better thoughts tomorrow.